Welcome to part 2 of completing the square of the fractions, and right now I am looking at number 6 on your worksheet. So this one looks like it's going to be a fun problem. So number 6 on your worksheet says 6x is equal to 4x squared minus 1. Now remember, if we follow the step-by-step procedure, our first step, we want to get all the variable terms on one side of the equation and all of our constant terms on the other side. So the way we do that is by subtracting 4x squared, and we end up getting negative 4x squared plus 6x is equal to negative 1. Now, there's a couple different ways that you could do this. If you like to have a positive in front of your squared variable term, you could have easily have added 1, and then subtracted 6x from that side and put it on this side. That's perfectly fine. But I'm just trying to develop a step-by-step procedure, and in all of the other examples, we've tried to pull all of our variable terms to the left-hand side and all of our constants to the right-hand side. But had you done this problem the opposite way, it still would work. It's perfectly fine to do that. So our next step is, now that we have all of our variable terms on one side and our constant term on the other, now we need to divide by something. What do we need to divide by? Yeah, so we need to divide every single term by negative 4. Now, one thing that I've been seeing some of you do is you skip over the second term. Like, you'll just divide the first term by negative 4, and then you'll divide the right-hand side of the equation by negative 4. But you have to divide every single term by the negative 4 in order for this to be mathematically legal. Every single term has to be divided by this number. So we have to divide that 6 by negative 4 for this to be okay. Now, negative 4 over negative 4, those cancel out, and we end up getting x squared. And now this is where it starts getting a little tricky. So we've got 6 divided by negative 4. So we know that a positive over a negative, that's going to give us a negative. And 6 over 4, okay, I'm just going to write 6 over 4 x is equal to, now we've got a negative over a negative, so that's a positive, and we've got 1/4. Now notice the way that I've written this. This is 6 over 4 times x. Now you have to be very careful how you write this, because what I see a lot of times is whenever people write their expressions like this is 6 over 4 times x, or you could write this as 6x over 4. And I'll write that up here in the corner, so note negative 6 over 4x is the same as negative 6x over 4. So what happens sometimes is people start writing this and their x will get a little lower, and moving from step to step, sometimes that x gets attached to the 4, which is not okay. This x is in the numerator. Okay, it's 6 times x. It's not 4 times x. So make sure that when you're writing this that you're aware that that x goes with the 6. It's being multiplied by the 6, not the 4. But anyway, so we've got our form that we need to have our expression in before we complete the square. So now we ask ourselves, what do we need to add to both sides to complete the square? And some people get a little confused here because they're dealing with fractions, but go ahead and give it a shot. What do you think we need to add to both sides to complete the square? So hopefully you weren't too intimidated by these fractions, because it's still the exact same process. You ask yourself, what is the coefficient of the non-squared term? So I go here. Here's our x to the 1. It's not squared, so this is the non-squared variable term. And I identify the coefficient. The coefficient in this case is negative 6 over 4. So I'll write this off to the side, negative 6 over 4, which of course can be reduced to negative 3 over 2. And we want to half that and square it. We've done this 100 times by now. Half it and square it. So you can do that by either dividing by 2 or what? Yeah, so I've said that like probably 100 times by now, but we want to multiply this by 1/2. I prefer to write it as multiplying by 1/2 just to make it a little easier to work with. So that's going to half our coefficient of x, and then we're going to square that result. So it's exactly the same as what we were doing when we were dealing with nice whole integer numbers. So when we multiply, we go straight across the top, straight across the bottom, and we end up getting -3 times 1. That's -3. And we got 2 times 2. That's going to be 4. So we get -3/4 here. And squared. And once we evaluate that, we're going to get, that is, we're going to square this -3/4. And actually, let me write this out step by step because I just want to be clear what I'm doing. So the square is going to go to each part of that fraction. So we'll square our -1, and of course, -1 times -1, that's just going to be positive. So any negative number squared will always be positive. So I could rewrite this as -1 squared times 3 squared over 4 squared. So how did I get that? I took my square, applied it to the -1, that's where this came from. I took my square, and I squared the 3, that's where this came from. And I took my square and applied it to the 4, that's where this came from. This is all okay. This is all okay because we only have one term in our parentheses here. And now, -1 squared, that's positive. 3 squared. 3 squared is going to be 9. And of course, 4 squared is 16. So we need to add 9/16 to both sides to complete the square. So we end up getting x squared minus 6/4, which we found out earlier is the same as 3/2x. Because if you remember, we rewrote -6/4 as -3/2. So I'm just going to go ahead and reduce that to -3/2 here is equal to 1/4. Oh, forgot something here. Forgot to write in my square, or the term that I need to add to complete my square. So we add the 9/16, and it's equal to, bring down my 1/4, and then add the 9/16. So now we have completed the square. Adding this 9/16 has completed the square. So go ahead and take a minute and see if you can finish solving this problem with the fractions, and then I'm going to storm through it and finish up this problem. So I hope at this point you're not getting too confused with the fractions. What we do is we bring this down, x squared. Well, actually, it's not x squared, it's just x. And we write this in its general form. Remember, when we complete the square, it's always going to have this general form, just like this. Okay? Anytime we complete the square, when we factor it, it's always going to have this general form. So we bring the 1/4 plus 9/16 down, which is kind of complicated. Let's go ahead and add these two fractions together. We've got 1/4 plus 9/16. If we want to find a common denominator, we multiply this by 4. And the reason we can do this is because 4/4 is 1, so this does not change this number at all. So we end up getting 4/16 plus 9/16, which is, of course, 9 plus 4, which is going to be 13/16. So we bring that down. So we know that 1/4 plus 9/16 is 13/16, and we write that here. 13/16. Now, what do you think? What do you think we need to add or subtract in here to factor this side of the expression? So hopefully you realize that it's still exactly the same as it was before, whereas what we add to complete the square is going to be half this squared. That's what we did up here. We halved it, and then we squared it. But what goes in here is just half the coefficient of x. So if we want to half this, we know it's just going to be the negative 3 over 4 before we square it. So half of negative 3 over 2 is negative 3 over 4. So we put in minus 3 over 4. And now it's factored. So let me just rewrite this on the next slide to give us a little bit more room to work with this expression. So we've got x minus 3 over 4 squared is equal to 13 over 16. Now we take the square root of both sides, square root of both sides, which is the square root. Barely got it there. All right, barely got it. We take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square, and we end up getting x minus 3 over 4 is equal to the square root of 13 over 16. Now we add 3 over 4 to both sides, and we end up getting x. X is equal to 3 over 4 plus the square root of 13 over 16, and we can do, because remember on the last slide we talked about how to apply that square root, so we can do the square root of 13 over 16. That's the same as saying the square root of 13 over the square root of 16, which will be the square root of 13 over plus or minus 4. Now we take that and plug it into our expression. So we get plus or minus up here, the square root of 13 over 4. And check it out. We already have a common denominator, so it made life really easy on us. So all we have to do is just write this as one term. So simplify it one more step, and we get 3 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 4, which if you look at your answer key, they got the exact same thing on the answer key. So these are our two solutions for x. All right, so I hope you feel pretty comfortable working with fractions when completing the square. If you don't, then just raise your hand and ask me. We'll walk through another example a little slower, and you can ask questions as we go. All right, great job, guys. Thanks for playing along, and just let me know if you have any questions.